Hello friends, today I am your storyteller. I hope you will enjoy this story. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so that we can receive your love and support. Now let's begin the story. I never thought a job at a Wendy's would end with me dialing 911. My hands shaking so badly I could barely press the numbers. But that came later. To really understand it, you have to know why I was there in the first place and how one quiet Indiana town almost swallowed me whole. My name's Aaron Collins, and in the fall of 2019, I was 25, broke, and just trying to keep my head above water. I'd grown up in Mapleton, Ohio, a nowhere place you'd drive through without realizing you'd passed it. My dad had been a mechanic until a back injury forced him on disability. My mom worked nights at the nursing home on Maple Avenue, which left me raising my little brother more often than not. After high school, I tried to escape. I really did. I got into a state college for nursing, but tuition chewed through my savings and maxed out my credit card before the end of sophomore year. By winter of 2018, I was back in Mapleton, broke, with a half-finished degree and loans already demanding payment. That's how I ended up at the Wendy's off Route 19, right next to the BP station and across from a shuttered Blockbuster that still had the faded blue sign. It wasn't glamorous. The red tiles inside were cracked, the soda machine leaked a little puddle every night, and the drive-through headset smelled faintly of grease, no matter how many times you wiped it down. But it was a paycheck. And when the manager, a chain-smoking woman named Tammy, asked if I could cover weekend graveyard shifts, I said yes. It meant $1 more an hour, and when you're choosing between rent or groceries, you don't say no. Most nights it was quiet, a drunk or two rolling through at 1 a.m., maybe a trucker grabbing a burger before heading downstate. The raccoons by the dumpster became such regulars I started naming them. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Until one October night when everything shifted. It was Saturday, October 19th. Not Halloween, not a holiday. Just one of those autumn nights when the air feels sharper, like something in it has changed. The shift started normal enough. I was paired with Diego, a 17-year-old high schooler who worked part-time washing dishes. He spent most of the night with one AirPod in, mumbling along to whatever rap album he was obsessed with that week. By 1:45 a.m., the last fryer basket had been scrubbed, the lobby mopped, and Diego was impatiently hovering by the clock. "You good if I head out?" he asked, already half unzipping his hoodie. "Yeah, go ahead," I said. "Just don't forget the trash run this time." He rolled his eyes but did it. By 2 o'clock, I was alone, which was normal. Tammy always scheduled one person from 2 o'clock until close at 6 o'clock. Corporate would never approve the payroll for a second body. I locked the lobby doors, flipped the drive-through sign to night menu, and sat down on the counter stool with a half-flat Diet Dr. Pepper. My eyelids felt like sandbags. I'd been up since 9 a.m. for a group project in my anatomy class. The hum of the freezer in the back was almost soothing. That's when the door buzzer chimed. Every time the lobby doors opened, an old buzzer went off, shrill like a smoke detector. Thing was, I had locked the doors. I knew I had. I double-checked after Diego left. I froze, the hairs on my arms standing up. Slowly, I walked around the counter. The restaurant was empty. "Hello?" My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. No answer. I pressed my palm to the door. Locked. Deadbolt still turned. I exhaled, trying to calm my racing chest. "Probably a sensor glitch," I muttered. Half the equipment in here was older than me. But then it happened again. Ding! This time I saw something, a shadow moving across the far set of dining room windows. I hurried to the glass and looked out. Across the road, under the flickering BP station light, sat an old boxy Chevy Caprice, faded blue with one headlight out. It wasn't a car I recognized, and in a town like Mapleton, you know everyone's car. At first it looked empty, but then the silhouette of a man sat up in the driver's seat. Slowly, he opened his door and turned his head toward me. Even from across the street, I felt the weight of his stare. I stepped back so quickly, I nearly tripped over a mop bucket. My chest thudded, shallow breaths rasping in my throat. That's when I remembered I wasn't alone. At one of the booths by the window sat Gretel Meyer, a 79-year-old with dementia from the Mapleton Assisted Living Home down the road. She wandered into Wendy's at least once a week, usually unnoticed until someone from her facility came to collect her. She'd slipped in around 11 that night, humming some tune I didn't recognize. and I'd given her a black coffee. She was coloring quietly when she looked up at me, her watery eyes startlingly clear. "What did the man want, dearie?" she asked. My stomach dropped. "What man?" She pointed vaguely toward the door. "The one who rang. He's been here before, hasn't he?" I stared at her, mouth dry. Before I could answer, the drive-through headset crackled. "Hey!" It was a man's voice, deep and rough. I pressed the headset. Yeah, we're open." "Go ahead when you're ready, Silence." "Hello," I said again, forcing cheer into my voice. A low chuckle came through, distorted by static. Slow, deliberate. Then nothing. I swallowed hard and went to the window. The Caprice was still there. Only now the passenger door was open. Movement in the lot caught my eye. Russell, the overnight janitor at the BP station, was dragging a trash bag toward the dumpsters. Relief surged through me. I banged on the glass until he looked over. "Russell!" I hissed, waving him over. He shuffled to the door and I cracked it open just enough to speak. "Did you see that car?" He nodded, scratching his beard. "Yeah, been sitting there a while. Weird guy in it. I saw him walking behind your building earlier." My blood ran cold. Can you just stay nearby?" "Please." Russell frowned, then gave a slow nod. "I'll make a couple rounds." I locked the door tight behind him. When I turned, my heart nearly stopped. At the center of the lobby, standing between two tables, was Charlie Bennett. Charlie was another assisted living resident. He used to be a painter before Alzheimer's stole most of his memory. He shouldn't have been here. And yet, there he was, holding a clean paintbrush in his hand, stroking the air like he was brushing invisible walls. "Charlie," I whispered. He turned his head slowly, a faint smile on his lips. "Don't answer the door alone," he said. "He'll hurt you." My knees nearly buckled. "Why would you say that?" Charlie shrugged. "The man told me." Before I could ask anything, something moved outside the side window. He stepped out of the darkness like he'd been waiting for me to notice. A tall, pale man in a torn hoodie and jeans stained with something dark. His face was gaunt, lips cracked, eyes hollow. He pressed close to the glass, staring straight at me. I screamed. He bolted into the shadows. Hands trembling, I snatched up the phone and dialed 911. My voice cracked as I begged the dispatcher to send someone. While I waited, I sat with Gretel and Charlie, my heart rattling like it was trying to escape my chest. They hummed softly, one coloring flowers, the other painting invisible walls like nothing was wrong at all. The cops arrived within 20 minutes. 2 officers I recognized from their morning coffee runs. They searched the lot, talked to Russell, and came back grim-faced. "There was a break-in a few blocks away," the older one told me. "Woman was assaulted. Suspect ransacked her meds. She's shaken, but alive." He met my eyes. "Your doors being locked probably saved you tonight?" I nodded numb. They never caught the guy. Or if they did, no one told me. Story 2. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a fast food place. When I was younger, I told myself I'd avoid jobs like that. Low pay, greasy smell in your clothes, rude customers. I wanted better. But sometimes life doesn't care what you plan. My name's Ethan Cole, I'm 26, and last year I found myself clocking in at the Wendy's off Route 47 in Millhaven, Missouri. If you look up Millhaven on a map, don't bother. It's one of those dots on the highway you blow past without noticing. A gas station, a strip mall with a laundromat, and our Wendy's standing alone at the far edge. Past us? Just 2-lane blacktop cutting into woods and farmland for miles. I hadn't been in Millhaven long. Moved back after dropping out of college in St. Louis when tuition got too steep and my loans kept piling up. My mom had space in her duplex, and I figured I'd save up, get stable, maybe go back later. That was the plan anyway. The Wendy's job wasn't supposed to be forever, just a paycheck until I figured out my next step. The graveyard shift seemed perfect for me. Extra pay, no bosses breathing down my neck, and fewer people to deal with. I liked quiet, always had, at least I thought I did. My first few weeks went smooth. The store was open 24/7, but after 11 p.m., we only ran the drive-thru. My manager, Dana, handled paperwork until midnight, then left me with the keys. I'd clean, stock, and wait for the rare straggler, usually a trucker grabbing burgers before hitting the interstate, or kids daring each other to order 50 chicken nuggets. Nights blurred together. I'd keep my earbuds in one ear, headset in the other. Sometimes I'd hum along to music while scrubbing the fryer baskets. Sometimes I'd read old texts from my ex, like a dumb habit I couldn't kick. Nothing bad ever happened. That was part of the comfort, but comfort makes you sloppy. The night everything changed was a Thursday. Funny how I still remember that detail, like the day of the week mattered. Dana was in one of her moods that evening, ranting about her teenage son skipping school. "Kids don't respect anything anymore," she said, slamming shut a box of sauce packets. "You're starting to sound like my mom," I joked. She gave me a look. "Shut up and mop." By midnight, she was gone, and I had the place to myself. The store was spotless, grill shining, trash taken out. I moved slow, dragging out chores to keep myself busy. Around 2 a.m., dead hour, I sat behind the counter munching on stale fries, scrolling my phone. That's when the headset beeped. The sudden ping startled me. I straightened, forced my best customer voice. "Welcome to Wendy's. Go ahead whenever you're ready, Silence." "Hello," I tried again. All I heard was breathing. Slow, raspy, right in my ear. I froze. Then a voice. Low, harsh, no emotion. "Don't say anything. Just open the back door," I laughed nervously. Sorry, what?" "Open. The back door." It didn't sound like a prank. Too steady, too close. My hand hovered over the switch to mute the mic. That's when a bang rattled the steel back door. I jumped so hard I nearly dropped the headset. Another slam followed, louder, shaking the frame. I backed into the prep area, heart racing. My first thought, teenagers messing around. But the voice in the headset was too deliberate, too dangerous. I ran to the office, locked the door, and grabbed the store phone. No signal, just dead air. Come on, I muttered, jabbing redial, trying 911. Nothing. I tore open the bottom drawer where Dana kept the emergency radio, tried raising the gas station manager across the street. Static. The banging stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I waited 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Eventually, I cracked the office door and crept into the kitchen. My shoes squeaked on the tile. The back door looked normal, except for one thing. Blood. Smears of it across the push bar, streaked down the metal. On the concrete outside the window, too. Dark stains, fresh. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. The knob jiggled. And then, nothing. I turned to run, only to freeze. Someone was already inside. He must have come through the drive-through window. I'd left it cracked after wiping the counter. He stood near the fry station. Tall, gaunt, mid-30s maybe. Dirty white shirt drenched in blood. Jeans ripped, one shoe missing. His left arm hung at a strange angle, crimson seeping from a ragged wound. In his right hand, a pistol. Our eyes locked. "Get down," he said. Calm, too calm. I didn't move. "Get down," he shouted, louder this time, voice cracking. I dropped to my knees, hands raised, breath coming in gasps. He stepped closer, gun steady. The smell hit me. Sweat, blood, rot. "I'm sorry," he muttered. His voice shook. I need your phone, your keys, wallet." "That's it," my words tumbled out. "Take them, please, just take them." He yanked my phone from my pocket, snatched my wallet from under the register. His eyes darted everywhere, frantic. Then he spotted the duct tape on the shelf. "Hands behind your back." "Please, man, do it!" I obeyed. The tape bit into my wrists, too tight, then my ankles. I could barely breathe. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said, voice trembling. I need a ride, that's all." And then he was gone. Keys jingling, door slamming, my truck's engine roaring to life, fading into the night. I lay on the greasy floor, shaking, duct tape cutting my skin. 10 minutes passed. 20. The tape loosened in the grease, and I wriggled one hand free. Crawled to the office, grabbed the landline, dialed 911. This time it worked. 911, what's your emergency?" The words spilled out in sobs. "Stay calm. the dispatcher said. "Help is on the way." When the police arrived, guns drawn, they swept the store. Nothing, just me, pale and trembling, wrists raw. Paramedics checked me over. No real injuries, just shock. By noon, detectives told me the man had been caught 40 miles east, in a town called Grayford. He'd crashed my truck into a ditch near a pawn shop, tried to sell my phone while bleeding all over the counter. Turns out he'd escaped from a prison transport 3 nights earlier. Violent history, robbery, assault. He'd already killed a gas station clerk during his escape. They told me I was lucky, that maybe his injuries slowed him down, or maybe he just didn't have the strength left to kill me. I quit Wendy's a week later. Never went back for my last check. I had them mail it. It's been months, but I still hear it sometimes. That soft ping of the drive-through headset, the rasp of heavy breathing in my ear, the calm voice telling me to open the back door. And I think about how quiet it was out there, off that lonely stretch of highway. So quiet that when I screamed, nobody was around to hear. Not a soul. Story 3. I never thought much about working at a fast food place. Back in high school, I'd always imagined it would be the kind of job you got for a summer, maybe a year if you were unlucky, before moving on to something better. But life doesn't always wait for you to be ready. Rent, bills, debt. They don't really care if you're in the right headspace. That's how I ended up at the Wendy's off Route 9, on the edge of Fairgrove, Ohio. It wasn't a bad town, just one of those places that time seemed to pass by without slowing down for. You had a Walmart, a Dollar General, a few churches, and a downtown that was half-empty storefronts. When people drove through, they didn't stop unless they needed gas or food, and even then, they usually went straight for McDonald's. Wendy's was quieter, tucked at the far end of a strip mall where a laundromat had shut down, leaving the whole lot feeling emptier than it should. I was 26 when I started there, just out of a breakup that left me sleeping on a friend's couch until I scraped together enough for a basement apartment. It wasn't much. One small window, constantly damp, and rent that ate more than half my paycheck. But it was mine, and it meant I didn't have to keep apologizing to people for just staying one more week. Day shifts filled up fast with high schoolers and single moms who needed hours that worked with their kids. So when the manager, Karen, asked if I could take overnights, I said yes. 11 at night to 7 in the morning, Friday through Tuesday. She warned me that most people didn't last long. "Gets lonely," she said, "and sometimes weird stuff happens at night." I thought she meant drunk customers. By the time October rolled around, I'd been there nearly 8 months. The crew on overnights was small. Derek, the cook, early 30s, shaved head, big guy with a quiet laugh. He'd worked there longer than anyone, almost 5 years, and he kept to himself unless you asked him something directly. Maya, 17, still in high school. She was supposed to only work till midnight on weekends, but she often stayed later if things ran behind. Sweet kid, nervous, always checking her phone like her mom might text any second. Angela, our overnight manager, mid-40s, divorced, chain smoker. She spent most of her time in the back office with the cameras or filling out inventory sheets. She was nice enough, but she had this way of making you feel like you shouldn't bother her unless it was serious. Then there was me, Eli. Register, drive-through headset, trash runs, cleaning, stocking. Basically whatever needed to get done. Security wasn't a big deal there. Fairgrove had crime, sure, but not the kind that made corporate think twice about leaving a skeleton crew alone at night. No guard, no locked gates. Just 2 dim lights over the back lot, a chain-link fence half collapsed into weeds, and a ditch that ran into the woods. Derek once told me he didn't like taking trash out alone. "Not 'cause of people," he said, shrugging. "Just feels off back there." I laughed it off, but I started noticing it too. The way the dark seemed thicker by the fence. How the air felt different once you stepped outside the glow of the lights. It was Friday, October 29th. I remember because we just finished putting up some dollar store Halloween decorations, plastic pumpkins taped to the drive-through window, fake cobwebs drooping over the napkin dispensers. Maya had stuck googly eyes on the frosty machine and laughed harder than anyone else at her own joke. The night started normal. A couple of drunk college kids came through the drive-thru around 11:30, and Derek grumbled while making their third order of Baconators. By 12:45, the place was dead. No cars in the lot, no headlights on the road, just the hum of the fryer and the rattle of the old ice machine in the back. I poured myself a coffee and decided to grab my jacket from the car. The cold had set in, one of those early autumn nights where you can see your breath, but the ground isn't frozen yet. I stepped out the back door, coffee steaming in my hand, and lit a cigarette. I'd been trying to quit, but nights like this pulled me back in. The lot was empty, cracked with weeds pushing through. My car sat 20 feet from the door, under the buzz of a weak orange light. Beyond that was the fence, rusted, sagging, with vines creeping up it. Past the fence, nothing but brush and the black line of the ditch. That's when I heard it, a soft ting, like metal on metal. I froze, exhaling smoke. Maybe a raccoon. They were always rummaging around dumpsters. But then it came again. Ting, jingle, ting. And it wasn't coming from the ground. It sounded higher, like someone was messing with the fence. I squinted into the dark. Nothing moved. I waved my arm to trigger the motion light above the door. It buzzed to life, flooding the lot in pale orange. That's when I saw it. The fence shook, violently, not like an animal, but like someone grabbing it with both hands and jerking it. "Hello," I called out before I could stop myself. My voice cracked. Silence, then movement. A figure, tall, upright, just beyond the fence line. The shape was wrong somehow, stretched. They pulled at the fence like they were trying to climb over. I bolted. Coffee sloshed down my sleeve as I fumbled the handle, yanked the back door open, and slammed it shut behind me. My heart hammered. Then, the knob twisted, hard. I grabbed it with both hands, holding it in place. Whoever was outside rattled it again, harder this time. "Angela!" I shouted. Her voice crackled through the headset. "What's going on? Someone's out back, trying to come in." There was a pause, then fast footsteps. Angela burst into the hall, Derek behind her with wide eyes. "You sure?" she asked. "Yes. They were at the fence. They tried the door." My hands still clutched the knob, trembling. Angela locked the deadbolt and shoved me back. We stood there, waiting. Nothing. Finally, she said, "Let's check the cameras." The three of us crowded into the office, Maya peeking in behind us. Angela rewound the feed from the backlot camera. On screen, there I was, standing by my car, sipping coffee, smoking. I waved my arm at the light. I could see myself stiffen, calling out into the dark. But the fence, empty, no figure, no movement, just stillness. We all leaned closer. The door camera showed me running inside, slamming it shut, then the knob. It twisted, jerked, violently, and my hands weren't on it. "Jesus," Derek whispered. Angela replayed it, slow, the knob moving on its own. The faintest shudder in the fence before I bolted. "Could be the wind," she muttered, but her voice didn't sound convinced. "There was no wind," I snapped. "I saw someone out there." We argued in circles, but the truth was there on screen. The fence didn't show anyone. Just me. Just shadows. The last few hours dragged. Nobody went near the back door again. We kept every lobby light blazing, cleaned in silence, jumped at every creak of the fryer. Angela didn't write it in the report. She just muttered, "Corporate'll call it an equipment glitch." When Derek clocked out at 7, he lingered beside me. "Been here years," he said softly. "Never seen anything like that." "You think I imagined it?" I asked. He shook his head. "No. I think you saw something we weren't supposed to." I stopped taking smoke breaks outside, switched to gum. From then on, trash runs were done in pairs, never after midnight. Nobody talked about it, but we all felt it. That heaviness near the fence, like someone was watching. 2 days later, Angela told me the security file corrupted. The footage of the door handle twisting? Gone. Corporate didn't care. Employee misunderstanding, that's what they called it. Maintenance checked the fence, said it was fine. A few months later, I transferred to a daytime shift across town. I told people it was for the better hours, the better pay. But the truth was, I couldn't stand the thought of that back lot, the orange light, the shadows that never showed on camera. I still dream about it sometimes. The fence rattling, the knob twisting, a shape that I know was there, even if no one else ever saw it. And in the dream, the door never locks. Story 4. I never imagined my life would be defined by a night shift at a fast food joint, but life rarely cares what you imagine. My name is Emily Harper, and when all this happened, I was 27, living in a town most people would only ever pass through on the way to somewhere better. The place was called Brookhaven, Missouri, a small dot off Interstate 44 with one gas station, 2 motels, a liquor store that always smelled like damp cardboard, and of course the Wendy's where I worked 5 nights a week. I hadn't planned to be there. Back in college, I studied early childhood education. I dreamed of teaching second graders, decorating bulletin boards with little cutout shapes, and buying pencils with smiley faces on them for kids who forgot theirs. But student loans don't pay themselves, and after my fiancée left, taking half our savings and all of my trust, I moved back in with my mom. She needed help with bills anyway, so I told myself I'd just work until I could get back on track. That was 2 years ago. By then, night shifts had become routine. I like them, in a way. No corporate managers breathing down your neck, fewer customers, the parking lot glowing under the yellow hum of fluorescent lights. Just the smell of fry oil in my hair, my coworker laughing at something dumb on her phone, and the sense that the world had forgotten you existed. Most nights were boring, comfortably boring, until one night that changed everything. That Wednesday, October 11th, started like any other. The air had that crisp fall bite to it, and when I pulled into the Wendy's lot at 9:45 p.m., leaves were skittering across the pavement like mice chased by the wind. The neon sign flickered between red and white, buzzing every so often. I parked my dented 2004 Honda Civic right near the dumpster out back, the spot nobody else wanted because of the smell. Inside, my coworker Kayla was already there. She was 21, all blonde highlights and fake lashes, the kind of girl who could scroll TikTok for 8 hours and not notice the world catching fire around her. Still, she was harmless and easy to work with. "You're late," she teased, glancing at the clock even though I wasn't. "You just like saying that," I muttered, tying my apron. Kayla laughed and went back to her phone. By 10:30, the dinner rush was long over. A couple of truckers had swung by for chili and Frosties. Some teenagers grabbed fries before heading off to God knows what small-town mischief. And then the place emptied. Quiet as a church. The only sounds were the buzz of the soda fountain, the low hum of the freezer in the back, and the occasional squawk of the headset when the drive-thru beeped. Outside, parked near the lot's edge, sat a familiar black and white cruiser. Officer Mark Daly, a sheriff's deputy in his mid-40s, made our Wendy's his unofficial office most nights. He'd stop in for coffee, chat with us, and sometimes just sit in his car, engine off, lights dark, keeping an eye on the lot. He was the kind of man who didn't talk much, but always left you feeling safer. I remember glancing at him through the front glass that night and thinking, good, he's here. It was a little after 11:20 p.m. when it happened. I was wiping down the counter, the cloth squeaking against the laminate, when the front door chimed. Ding. I looked up. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark, sweat-matted hair stuck to his forehead. His gray t-shirt clung to him, soaked through. At first, I thought he'd been caught in the rain, but it hadn't rained in Brookhaven for days. Then I saw the color. Deep, heavy red. Blood. It covered him. His shirt, his jeans, even dripping from his fingertips onto the tile. Drip. Drip. "Hi," he said softly, voice flat, almost childlike. "Can I get a sandwich?" My throat tightened. For a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Too much red, too surreal. It looked staged, like bad Halloween makeup. But the way it pooled on the floor told me it was real. Behind me, Kayla hadn't noticed yet. She had her earbuds in, scrolling. Typical. I forced my voice steady. "Sure," I said, nodding like this was perfectly normal. "What kind of sandwich?" The man's eyes, glassy, vacant, flicked up to the glowing menu board above me. "A Baconator," he whispered. "Yeah, a Baconator." His hand trembled as he pointed. More blood slid down his wrist. I needed Kayla out of the room, fast. Turning toward the prep station, I said, loud enough for the man to hear, "Hey, Kayla, can you grab some lettuce from the walk-in?" "We're out here." She rolled her eyes, tugging one earbud free. "There's some right there." "No," I insisted, forcing my tone casual but firm. "The extra bin in the back. Cooler." "Please." Something in my eyes must have spooked her, because she frowned but got up slowly, disappearing into the walk-in cooler. My heart thudded. At least she was safe. I focused on the sandwich, hands shaking as I unwrapped the bun and slapped on the patty. Anything to keep moving, keep the man calm. "You're bleeding," I said carefully, glancing at him. He blinked slowly. "It's not mine." I froze mid-squeeze of the mustard bottle. "What?" "I don't think it's mine," he mumbled. His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to." He rubbed his temple like a man waking from a bad dream. That's when the front door chimed again. Ding. Relief flooded me as Officer Daly stepped inside, calm as ever, his hand resting near his holster but not drawing. "Evening," he said, his voice steady. "How's it going in here?" The man didn't turn. He just swayed slightly, his grip tightening around the counter. I slid the sandwich toward him, praying my hands didn't shake too much. "Here you go, sir." Baconator. He reached for it with blood-slick fingers. His sleeve slid down, revealing a deep gash on his forearm. Fresh blood oozed. Daly took a slow step forward. "You hurt, buddy?" The man turned, finally noticing him. His whole body stiffened. "I didn't mean to," he whispered again, more urgent this time. Daly nodded gently. "I bet you didn't. Why don't you sit down? We'll get you some help." The man's breathing quickened. He took a shaky step back toward the door. Then, like a switch flipping, he lunged. It happened in a blur. The sandwich dropped to the floor. The man's hand flashed, a glint of silver. Knife, small but sharp. Blood sprayed as he swung wildly. Daly was faster. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it hard until the knife clattered against the tile. In one motion, he shoved him face first against the counter, blood smearing across the laminate. "Get back!" Daly barked at me. I stumbled, heart pounding so hard it drowned out every sound, except Kayla's sudden scream from the cooler doorway. She must have come back too soon. Daly wrestled the man to the ground, pinning him with a knee to his back. The man fought weakly, muttering over and over, "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't." Click. Handcuffs snapped shut. Just like that, it was over. Paramedics came, then detectives, then reporters. They told us the man's name was Daniel Keene, 34, staying at a motel off Highway 44. He'd stabbed another man in a room there. Multiple wounds, brutal, personal. He claimed it was self-defense, but the scene told a different story. Too much rage in the attack, too messy. Afterward, bleeding, shocked, he'd walked nearly a mile, straight into our Wendy's, asking for a sandwich like he hadn't just destroyed a life. That part haunted me. I stayed at Wendy's for another couple of weeks, but I couldn't handle the door chime anymore. Every time it rang, I flinched. Every man in a hoodie looked like him. Every dark stain on the floor made me think blood. Corporate sent us panic buttons the size of key fobs. Management gave us safety seminars. None of it mattered. The fear stayed. By November, I quit, moved 2 towns over, took a job at a small bookstore, day shifts only, safer, quieter. And yet, even now, years later, whenever I drive past a Wendy's or hear the sizzle of bacon on a grill, my chest tightens. I see his face again, blank, bloodied, lost. And I still hear his words, whispered like a prayer as they dragged him away in cuffs. I didn't mean to. Story 5. I never thought fast food would become part of my life story, let alone the kind of story I'd still be telling years later, with a pit in my stomach. But life has a way of cornering you when you're 17, broke, and trying to figure out what it means to be an adult without really being one. Back then, I lived in a town called Clearwater Ridge, Nevada. Population maybe 4,000, if you counted the dogs and the guys sleeping in their trucks out by the highway. It wasn't the kind of place where people dream big. If you stayed, you worked construction, clerking, or one of the handful of chain restaurants that lined Highway 63. My name's Ethan Moore. When this happened, I was a high school senior just trying to scrape together enough money for gas, prom, and maybe a cheap used car if the universe didn't completely hate me. My mom worked the nights as a nurse. My dad had bailed when I was 11, so responsibility came early. I got the Wendy's job because my buddy Chris vouched for me. Easy money, he said, grinning while we killed a 2-liter of Mountain Dew in his garage. They need people for closing shifts, sometimes overnights. All you gotta do is clean, prep, and keep the fryers from catching fire. I swear you could sleep through half the shift and no one would notice. I believed him. That was mistake number 1. Wendy's in Clearwater Ridge sat on the far edge of town, next to an abandoned strip mall where tumbleweeds made better customers than people. The restaurant itself wasn't new, but it wasn't a complete dump either. Faded red tiles, flickering fluorescent lights, a freezer door that squealed when you pulled it open. My first couple weeks weren't bad. I learned how to run the register, mop the floor, and prep chili from the leftover burger patties. I worked the drive-thru on slower nights and scrubbed the grill until my arms ached. Chris was right. It did feel easy, too easy, and then they asked me to start covering graveyard shifts. Pays $1.50 more an hour, said Maria, our shift manager. She was in her mid-30s, chain-smoked on breaks, and had a voice that sounded like gravel. Just keep the place clean, prep for breakfast, and serve the occasional trucker who pulls through at 2 a.m. Simple. You in? I thought of gas money, of freedom, of that beat-up Civic sitting in a used car lot downtown. Yeah, I said, I'm in. The shift that changed everything started on a Saturday. It was October. The desert wind carried a bite at night, the kind that made your ears sting. The Wendy's parking lot was empty when Mom dropped me off just before 10 p.m. She leaned across the passenger seat before I got out. You sure you'll be all right walking home if your ride flakes? She asked. Yeah, Mom, I said, embarrassed. Chris is on till close. He'll drive me. She gave me that look, the one that said she didn't buy it but was too tired to argue. Keep your phone on you. Always. Inside, Chris was already messing with the Frosty machine. Dude, this thing's possessed, he said, smacking the side of it. Chocolate sludge oozed out. Swear to God, it moans when nobody's around. I laughed, but it stuck with me longer than it should have. By midnight, the place was dead. No cars in the lot, no voices in the dining room, just the hum of the freezer and the buzz of old lights. Maria left at 11, leaving me, Chris, and Angela, a quiet sophomore who worked prep. Around 12:15, Angela got picked up. Chris looked at me, tossing his apron onto the counter. Hey, I'm bouncing too. My cousin's having people over. Wait, what? You're scheduled till 6. Yeah, but you got this, right? It's easy. Before I could argue, he was gone. I stood alone in the empty restaurant, mop in one hand, silence pressing against the windows. At 1 a.m., I decided to restock the walk-in cooler. Everyone at Wendy's had stories about it. How the door jammed sometimes, how it was colder than it should have been, how the light flickered even though it had a new bulb. I yanked the handle and stepped inside. Breath fogged in front of me. Shelves of lettuce, tubs of chili, boxes of frozen fries. All normal, except the door closed harder than I meant it to. Click. My chest tightened. I pushed. It opened. Fine. No reason to panic. Still, I stacked boxes as fast as I could and got the hell out. When I looked back, I could have sworn I heard whispering. By 2:30 a.m., I was dragging the mop across the tile near the front counter when I heard it. Thunk. From the kitchen. Heavy. Like something dropped. Chris? I called out before remembering I was alone. No answer. Just the hum of the freezer. I gripped the mop handle like a weapon and walked back. Fryers empty. Grill clean. Nothing on the floor. Then I noticed the cooler door. Wide open. I swear I closed it. Hello? I said, voice cracking. No response. But I heard it again. Soft. Scratchy. Like someone murmuring underwater. My heart hammered. I backed into the dining room, eyes fixed on that dark rectangle of the cooler doorway. Then I saw it. A shadow moved across the hallway that led to the restrooms. Human-shaped. Not creeping, not rushing. Just walking, like it belonged there. I dropped the mop. My legs carried me outside before my brain caught up. The desert air hit me, cold and sharp. I crouched by the dumpster, hugging myself for warmth, eyes locked on the glass doors. For the next hour, I swore I saw movement inside. A figure pacing, sometimes near the fryer, sometimes near the restrooms. At one point, the dining room lights flickered. On, off, on. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Headlights cut across the lot at 3:41 a.m. I nearly cried. Maria's old Buick rolled in. She stepped out, cigarette already lit. "Kid, what the hell are you doing outside?" she barked. I stumbled toward her. "There's someone inside. I swear, I saw—" She frowned, marched past me and yanked open the door. The lights were steady now. The cooler closed. Empty silence. "Nobody here," she said flatly. "But I saw—" "You're tired, Ethan. Happens to everybody. Next time, bring a radio or something. Don't let your imagination screw with you." She drove me home at 6 o'clock when my shift ended. I didn't argue. I never worked another solo overnight. Not after that. Chris laughed when I told him. "Bro, you were just sleep-deprived. Cooler's creepy, sure. But ghosts? Nah, maybe he was right. Maybe it was exhaustion, dehydration, the weird way empty buildings mess with your head. But some nights, when the wind howls through the desert and rattles my window, I hear it again, that low, watery whisper. And sometimes, when I dream, I see the shadow walking down the Wendy's hallway. Not rushing, not creeping, just moving, like it's still waiting. Story 6, I was 9 years old when it happened. Back then, I thought Wendy's was nothing more than a place where you went for fries, Frosties, and maybe a toy if you were lucky enough to get a kid's meal. It wasn't special. It was just a stop we made on Friday nights before my parents dragged me back to their office for a few hours of grown-up work. At least that's what I thought at the time. I had no way of knowing that one night in that same routine, a Wendy's stop would become tied to the most terrifying memory of my life. But if I'm going to tell this right, it doesn't actually start at Wendy's. It starts with my mom and dad. My parents weren't the type to hire babysitters. They trusted each other and the small circle of people they worked with far more than leaving me with some stranger. Back in the early 2000s, they both worked for a regional environmental research department in northern Colorado, in a government-owned building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. Peeling yellow paint, scratched linoleum floors, and the constant buzzing of fluorescent lights that seemed to hum directly into your skull. The building sat just 2 streets away from a Wendy's, and on nights when they had late deadlines, especially Fridays, we had a little ritual. Mom would pick me up after school, Dad would already be at the office, and we'd swing by Wendy's on our way. I'd get my usual 6-piece nuggets, small fries, and a chocolate Frosty. Then we'd carry the paper bags and cardboard drink trays into the office, and I'd camp out in the break room with the food and a tiny TV someone had left hooked up to rabbit ears. For a while, I thought of that Wendy's almost like a second home. The staff knew me well enough to smile when I came in, and I was small enough that the teenage cashiers would lean down and ask if I was the Frosty kid before punching in my order. That was the normal part of my life. Safe, predictable. Then there was him. I'll call him Rick. That wasn't his real name, but it's the one I'll use here. Rick wasn't an employee at Wendy's. He was the night security guard for my parents' building. He had one of those deep, smooth voices that seemed like it belonged on the radio. He carried a heavy flashlight on his belt, wore cologne that lingered after he left a room, and he chewed gum constantly. To me, at 9 years old, he seemed cool. To my mom, he came off as polite. To my dad, though, I don't think he ever trusted him. "Evening, sport," Rick would say when he saw me. Sometimes he crouched down to my height, smiling a little too wide. "What's the password tonight?" The first time he asked, I just made up something silly like chicken nuggets, and he laughed, stepping aside like he was letting me through a secret checkpoint. It felt like a game, a joke. He made paper airplanes out of scrap paper for me once, tossed them across the hallways when the place was empty. But one Friday night in late September, the game stopped feeling like a game. It had been raining all afternoon, cold, sharp drops that made the air smell like wet asphalt. Mom swung by Wendy's as usual, grabbing food to go, and we headed to the office. I sat in the break room, swinging my legs under the chair, and eating nuggets while a cartoon flickered on the little TV. My parents were buried in reports and spreadsheets, their attention already pulled 100 different ways. That's when Rick showed up. He walked in like he always did, nodded at my parents, then looked at me. "Got your Frosty, huh?" he said with a grin. "Yeah," I mumbled through a mouthful of fries. He leaned against the doorway. "You want to see something cool? Just down the hall. Won't take long." I looked at my mom. She was half distracted, shuffling through papers. Without looking up, she said, "Don't go far. Stay with Rick." And that was it. Permission granted. I grabbed my Frosty, slid off the chair, and followed him out. That was the last normal moment of the night. The hallways looked different at night. Emptier, colder. The vending machines hummed louder, the lights buzzed harder, and every step echoed longer. Rick's flashlight beam danced along the walls as he led me toward the east stairwell. "You ever see the basement?" he asked. I hesitated. "I'm not supposed to go too far." "Come on," he chuckled. "I used to be a kid too, you know. I know where all the fun spots are in this old dump." Just a few minutes. The way he said it made me feel silly for doubting. I nodded and followed him down the stairwell. The basement smelled different. Dust, metal, old coffee filters. The heavy metal door groaned as it shut behind us, and the air felt heavier, like the whole place was holding its breath. "You ever see a boiler room?" Rick asked. I shook my head. "Well," he said, flipping on a switch that lit up a narrow corridor, "you're about to." We walked past old filing cabinets, janitorial closets, stacks of boxes with faded government stamps. Pipes rattled overhead like hollow bones. He led me into a small room where two huge machines groaned and hissed, their pipes running along the ceiling like veins. I barely had time to take it in before he said, "Want to play a game?" I shrugged. "Okay." He smiled, reached into his pocket, pulled out a piece of paper, and folded it into a quick plane. He tossed it down the hall. "Go get it, then you throw it back." I laughed, ran after it, grabbed the plane where it landed near a closet door. That's when I heard it. Click. The unmistakable sound of a light switch. Then clunk. The slam of a heavy door. Everything went black. "Rick," I called, my voice suddenly small. No answer. "Rick!" Nothing. The basement swallowed my voice. I dropped the Frosty, tripped over something, scraped my palms on the floor. Panic rose fast and hot in my chest. I stumbled through the dark, hands outstretched, banging on every door I found. At some point, I screamed his name until my throat burned. The only reply was the faint echo of footsteps, too far to know if they were coming closer or walking away. I curled up against the wall, crying, shivering, every shadow in my head stretching into monsters. Upstairs, I learned later, my mom eventually looked up from her papers and realized I'd been gone too long. She went to the break room, empty, asked my dad. He thought I'd just gone to the bathroom. 15 minutes passed, then 30. That's when my mom panicked. She stormed down to the lobby and saw Rick at the reception desk, calmly sipping a soda. "Where's my son?" she demanded. Rick blinked, chewing his gum slow. "He was just with me." Must have wandered off. I told him to wait by the elevators. My dad was right behind her, fists clenched, his eyes like thunderclouds. "What the hell do you mean wandered off?" They searched the building, shouting my name, checking every office. Nothing. Finally, my mom grabbed the master key ring and headed for the basement. When I heard her voice echo down the hall, I bolted to the nearest door and pounded my fists until they opened it. My mom scooped me up, sobbing, while my dad stared at Rick like he wanted to tear him apart. Rick's excuse was simple. I'd slipped away while he was showing me something cool. They didn't buy it. He was reported the next day, fired by the end of the week. But it didn't end there. 2 months later, police showed up at our house. They had questions for my dad since he worked in data storage. Turns out Rick hadn't just been a weird security guard. He'd been involved in stealing outdated government computers and selling them for parts, and sometimes the data inside them. They couldn't prove what his intentions were that night in the basement. Maybe he meant to come back for me after everyone left. Maybe I was just a distraction. Maybe it was something worse. I'll never know. What I do know is this. I never stepped foot in that Wendy's again. And when people talk about horror, They picture demons, ghosts, haunted dolls. But real horror? Real horror is quieter. It wears a uniform. It chews gum. It smells like cologne and smiles too wide. And sometimes it starts with, "Hey, sport, got your nuggets?" Story 7. I was 21 when it happened. Young, broke, and desperate to prove I could stand on my own. It was 2021, the year when the world still felt cracked down the middle from COVID. Everyone wore exhaustion on their face. Grocery clerks, gas station attendants, the parents dragging their restless kids through strip malls. I had dropped out of community college the year before, right when the pandemic chewed up everyone's plans. And by 2021, I was sleeping on my cousin Leah's futon in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. Leah worked double shifts as a CNA at a nursing home, so she was hardly home, but she didn't mind me crashing. I told myself it was temporary. Just a few months until I got on my feet. Still, every morning when I folded that futon back into a couch, my stomach tightened. I hated feeling like dead weight. So when I got a job at Wendy's, of all places, I treated it like a lifeline. It wasn't glamorous, just fast food, but it was mine. My first paycheck, my first real uniform, my first time swiping a time card and watching the numbers tick up. This Wendy's sat on the edge of Maplewood, a small, half-forgotten Florida town people usually pass through on their way to Orlando. Our strip was predictable. A Dollar General, a failing tanning salon, a boarded-up mattress store. But the Wendy's? It still looked respectable. New paint job, a glowing sign, clean red booths. We closed at 10 p.m., and I usually worked the evening shifts, 3 to close. Nights were quiet, customers thinned after dinner, and the place took on this stillness I weirdly liked. It was just me, the fryers hissing, the hum of the soda machine, and sometimes the laughter of a coworker echoing from the back. My manager, Patricia, everyone called her Trish, was in her mid-50s. Stern, sharp-eyed, never wasted words. But she was fair. If you did your job, she had your back. I liked her because she made chaos feel manageable. On most nights, I worked with Luis, a quiet 20-year-old line cook who always wore earbuds while prepping chicken. Sometimes we'd have a part-timer who left early. That left me alone on counter and drive-thru. I didn't mind. There was something peaceful about scrubbing the lobby with music in my ears, pretending the whole place belonged to me. But that peace didn't last. It was a Thursday in February, warm, sticky air, the kind of winter that made Florida feel like it had skipped seasons altogether. I clocked in at 2:59 p.m., tugged my apron tight, and tied my curls back into a bun. Andrea, a day shift cashier, was signing out as I walked in. She looked frazzled, chewing her gum too fast. "Long day?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "Some lady called 3 times about that new bacon maple chicken thing." I told her it's dine-in only, but she kept accusing me of lying, like I was hiding it in the back for fun. Andrea slung her bag over her shoulder. "If she shows up tonight, good luck." I laughed, thinking it was just another entitled customer story. At Wendy's, they were a dime a dozen. The dinner rush was slow. A few regulars, an older couple who always split a Frosty, a delivery driver grabbing a burger to go. By 4, the parking lot was nearly empty. I was wiping down trays when headlights cut across the window. A tan Ford, faded, dented, pulled in crooked, spanning 2 spaces. 3 people got out, 2 men and a woman. The woman was tall, early 40s maybe, with bleached blonde hair pulled tight and heavy makeup that looked half melted in the humidity. She wore oversized sunglasses even though the sky was gray. The 2 men looked like they'd been plucked out of a pawn shop parking lot. Boots, stained jeans, chunky rings. The woman walked in first, leading like she owned the place. Her eyes found me at the counter, and she smiled too brightly. "You the one I talked to about the sandwich?" she asked, her voice sugar-sweet but rehearsed. I froze. Andrea's warning clicked in my head. "Yeah, that was probably me," I said carefully. "You still want to dine in?" "Guess I have to," she sighed, rolling her eyes before flashing another smile. "No big deal. You're just doing your job, sweetie." She ordered 2 maple chicken sandwiches, 1 classic chicken, and 3 sodas. While I rang her up, I noticed she carried a red binder tucked under her arm with a black pen clipped to it. Odd for fast food, but maybe she was a realtor or something. Maplewood had been buzzing with new housing plans. I brought their tray out a few minutes later. She leaned closer when I set it down. "You live around here?" Something in her tone made me hesitate. "Yeah, sorta. We're looking to expand a business here," she said, glancing at one of the men scribbling in the binder. "You ever think about doing something besides this?" I laughed nervously. "First job. Just trying to get steady." Her perfume hit sharp as she leaned closer. "We run a private cleaning company. High-end clients. Discreet. Girls like you do real well with us. Pretty, polite, good energy." The word discreet snagged like barbed wire. One of the men spoke for the first time, his voice gravelly. 30 grand. Easy. Most girls barely work half the time." My chest tightened. I forced a polite smile. "I'm not really looking for anything new right now." The woman's smile didn't budge. "It's not even hard work, honey. You just gotta show up. We've got a van that picks up our girls, so you wouldn't need a car." Her finger pointed casually toward the lot. "At least let me show you a picture." "It's right here on my phone," but she was already holding her phone. No reason to walk outside. My pulse thudded in my ears. "I'm on shift," I said firmly, stepping back. "I should get back to the counter." The man chuckled low. Not friendly. I retreated fast, kept myself busy at the register, refusing to look back until, at 5 o'clock, they finally left. As they walked past the window, the woman turned and waved. That smile again, too wide. Luis came out from the back. "What was that about?" "Some cleaning job pitch," I muttered, trying to sound casual. "Didn't sound right," he smirked. "Hey, 30 grand's 30 grand. "Shut up," I snapped, punching his arm. I laughed, but my stomach knotted. Something about her lingered, oily and wrong. That night, Luis's grandmother came to pick us up. A quiet woman with kind eyes, she always waited until we were both outside before unlocking the doors. As we drove, I told her about the strange offer. Her face paled. She pulled onto the shoulder and turned to me, her voice low but urgent. "That wasn't a cleaning company. That's how traffickers talk. Pretty girls. Easy work. No car needed. A van to pick you up." My breath caught. The word trafficker made my skin crawl. "You were this close, mija," she said, holding her fingers a hair apart. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. My hands shook against my lap. For the rest of the drive, I stared at the window, replaying every detail. Her perfume, the chuckle, that damn red binder. The next day, I tried to shrug it off. Told myself they were just sleazy salespeople or some MLM scheme. I wanted to believe that. But around 11:30 a.m., just before lunch rush, a man walked in, alone. He was mid-40s, bald, clean-shaven, button-up shirt tucked in too neatly, and in his hand, a red binder with a black pen clipped to it. My blood turned to ice. He ordered a black coffee, sat in the booth near the front window and stayed there. No phone, no laptop, just watching, occasionally scribbling in the binder. I stocked napkins, wiped counters, anything to keep moving, but every time I glanced up, his eyes were on me. No smile, no expression, just watching. 2 hours crawled by. At one point, he made a call, speaking low. I was close enough to catch pieces. "Yeah, I moved it. Should cover that by tonight. Girls still lined up. Send their cuts. Need another spot closer to the water?" My chest hammered. I nearly ran to the back. "Luis," I hissed. "That guy's with them." The binder. The way he's watching. "He's one of them," Luis peered out. His jaw tightened. "I'll help you take trays out there." "Stay close." We hovered, pretending to clean near his booth. After 10 minutes, the man gathered his binder and left. No glance back. Just gone. I gave my 2 weeks the next morning. Trish didn't ask why. Maybe she already knew. I never saw them again. Not the woman with the sunglasses, not the man with the binder. But I think about them every time I close up a store, every time I walk across a dark parking lot. I still hear her voice dripping sugar. "You'd be perfect." But I wasn't. And thank God I never found out what she meant. Story 8. I was 19 the summer I started working at Wendy's. Not because it was my dream job, not because I thought slinging burgers would look good on a resume, but because I didn't have much of a choice. My mom's new husband made it real clear I wasn't welcome under his roof once I turned 18. "Grown men don't freeload," he told me the night before graduation, his voice thick with beer. My mom didn't argue. She didn't even look at me when I shoved some clothes into a trash bag and left. I bounced around a bit, stayed with friends until their parents got tired of feeding me, slept in my car when I had no other option. Then my Aunt Linda, my mom's older sister, told me I could crash at her trailer on the edge of Mason Creek, North Carolina, as long as I pulled my weight. Rent wasn't money, it was chores, gas runs, watching her dogs when she worked double shifts at the hospital. That was the deal. Still, groceries weren't free, and neither was gas for my beat-up 2003 Honda Civic. That's how I ended up applying at the Wendy's off Route 47. If you've ever been to Mason Creek, you'd know there's not much here. Walmart, 2 gas stations, a Dollar Tree that smells like mop water no matter the hour, and the Wendy's. The building itself sat awkwardly at the edge of a half-abandoned strip mall with a shuttered laundromat on one side and a vape shop on the other. The kind of place truckers stopped at because there wasn't anywhere else, and locals stopped at because it was either that or McDonald's 20 minutes down the highway. I didn't mind the job at first. It was easy enough. Minimum wage, sure, but steady. It kept me from feeling like dead weight at my aunt's place. But it was the night shifts that really got to me. The first couple months weren't bad. Slow, quiet, just me and whoever else got stuck with closing. There was something kind of peaceful about it. Fryers humming, fluorescent lights buzzing, the smell of grease baked into your clothes. But other nights it felt like the whole building was too quiet, like I was waiting for something to happen, and eventually it did. It was late September, just about 3 months into the job. A storm had rolled through earlier that afternoon. By the time my shift started at 6, the rain had passed, leaving the pavement dark and gleaming under the parking lot lights. The air was damp and heavy, smelling like wet asphalt and fried food. That night it was just me, a 23-year-old grill worker named Tasha, and our manager Jerry, who stayed in the back doing paperwork. "Slow night, thank God," Tasha said, flipping a patty onto the grill. "Usually Fridays are crazy. Maybe the storm scared people off." "Fine by me," I said, tying my apron. For a while it was just that. Quiet. A family of 4 came through, then a couple of teenagers who ordered fries and spilled ketchup everywhere. By 8, the dining room was empty. I was leaning against the counter, half dozing, when the front door opened at 8:40. I straightened up. "Welcome to Wendy's," I said automatically. The guy who walked in didn't look threatening at first. Maybe late 20s, average height, gray hoodie, jeans, scruffy beard. But the way he carried himself, slow, deliberate, eyes sweeping the place before locking on me, set me on edge. "What's the cheapest thing you got?" he asked, his voice low. "We've got the 4 for $4 deal," I said. "Burger, nuggets, fries, drink." He nodded slowly, then pulled a beat-up wallet from his pocket. His eyes stayed fixed on me while he fumbled with wrinkled bills. "You work here long?" he asked. "Couple months." "You like it?" "It's all right." He handed me a 5, then looked down at my name tag. He said my name, Sarah. Pretty name. It wasn't the words that made me uneasy. It was the way he said them. Flat, deliberate, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "Your food'll be right out," I said quickly. Instead of sitting in a corner, he leaned against the napkin station, watching. Pretending not to, but I could see it in the reflection of the window. Tasha leaned through the kitchen window, whispering, "Yo, that guy's creeping on you. You noticed too?" "Hell yeah. Want me to hand him the bag?" I shook my head. "It's fine. Just be quick." When I finally slid the bag across the counter, he took it without thanks. Then he filled his drink slower than humanly possible and sat at the table directly across from me. And he didn't eat. Not really. He nibbled at a fry, chewed one nugget for what felt like minutes, but mostly, he watched me. 10 minutes, 15, 20, still there. At 9:20, Tasha muttered, "Want me to tell him to move along?" "I'll be fine," I lied. My stomach was in knots. At 9:58, I clocked out in the back, clipped my pepper spray to my lanyard, and came back up front. He was gone. Finally left, Tasha said. Didn't say a word. Relief washed through me. I grabbed my bag. Can you watch me to my car? She smirked. Paranoid much? Humor me. The air outside was thick and heavy, the lot nearly empty except for my Civic under the flickering light. I made it halfway before I froze. A shadow shifted behind the dumpster. A figure stepped out. Same hoodie, same beard. Hey, he called, voice too loud in the still night. Got a minute? No, I snapped, backing up. I'm off the clock. He stepped closer. Just want to talk. You seem like someone who'd understand me. My hand wrapped tight around the pepper spray. Before I could raise it, the door behind me burst open. Yo, Tasha shouted. Back the hell off! The man froze, scoffed, then turned and walked off into the dark. No car, no ride, just gone. I barely slept that night. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just some creepy drifter, harmless in the end. Then the calls started. Blocked numbers. First time I answered, it was just breathing. Second time, the same. The third time, a whisper. You're always smiling. I liked that I stopped answering. He kept calling. At work, I checked over my shoulder constantly. Asked Jerry if the cameras covered the lot. They didn't. I started parking right in front of the door under the brightest light. 2 weeks passed. Then one night, I came out to my car and found a note under the windshield wiper. 4 words scrawled in black ink. You can't avoid me. I showed the police. They took a report, even had a patrol car swing by sometimes. But there wasn't proof. Then, silence. For almost 3 weeks, no calls, no notes, no shadow in the parking lot. I thought maybe he'd moved on. Maybe I was safe. Until the Friday night at home max. I wasn't working. For once, I had a weekend off. My aunt wanted me to pick up some supplies for her shed. I was halfway down the power tools aisle when I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I turned. Same hoodie, same beard, same 2 still eyes. He smiled. You thought you could forget me. My throat closed. I miss that smile, he said. You shouldn't have run last time. I backed up. My voice came out raw. I don't know you. Stay away from me. It echoed through the aisle. Other customers turned. A worker rushed over. The man froze, startled, then bolted. This time, the police took it seriously. They pulled footage, opened an investigation. I left town the next day, stayed with a friend, installed a security system at my aunt's. But I still jump at every knock, every buzz of my phone, every shadow too close behind me, because some men don't just ask for your number. Some don't just ask for money. Some ask for you in pieces, 1 minute at a time, and sometimes they don't stop asking.